I'm Morgan Ring, I'm a historian, and I'm the author of So High a Blood, the story of Margaret Douglas, the Tudor that time forgot. And it's the story of one woman's role in the dramatic politics of England and Scotland in the 16th century. When the Tudors come to power, they are following on effectively a generation of civil war and a great period of instability, and they seem like England's best hope for some peace and some continuity. But Henry VIII, who is the second Tudor king, has real difficulty in producing a male heir, and he thinks that having a son is the key to preserving his dynasty. So in order to be able to marry the woman whom he thinks will be able to give him a son, he breaks with the Church of Rome and breaks England off from the rest of Western Christendom. And what we then see over the next several decades is that his children go back and forth between the Church of England and the Church of Rome. So when his son, who he does eventually have a son, comes to power as Edward VI and takes the country in this very decisively Protestant direction, then his daughter Mary takes the country back to Rome. His daughter Elizabeth separates it again, and none of Henry's children have children of their own. And eventually the crown in 1603 passes to James VI, who is the heir of Henry's elder sister Margaret. So what we get instead of stability is we get nearly 100 years of deep uncertainty over who is coming next when the monarch dies, as well as deep uncertainty and debate and division about the faith of the country. The question of women and power in the 16th century is a really fascinating one, because we do have a lot of women who, by accident of birth, end up ruling countries. So we have Mary I and Elizabeth I ruling in England, we have Mary Queen of Scots ruling in Scotland, and all down the hierarchy we have women exercising a lot of power in unexpected ways. But at the same time, there are quite firm boundaries that women are not expected to transgress. And so for most of her life, Margaret is very good at adapting herself to the conventions of the age. You know, she is the sort of model noblewoman. She is in a very loving marriage. She's the mother of two sort of handsome sons. But at certain points in her life, she comes very much up against the boundaries of what's considered acceptable. And then suddenly, instead of being seen as this loving wife and mother, she is a woman who is dominating her husband and being ludicrously ambitious for her children. Instead of being a pious woman, suddenly she's a woman who's consulting witches and soothsayers. And instead of being a valued, respected member of the royal family, suddenly she's a woman who's aiming at the crown. So while I think for the most part, she plays this role of the 16th century noblewoman very, very well, she also really ends up finding out what the limits are. Margaret comes to the English court as a teenager, and it's easily the most exciting place she's ever been, but it's also the scariest place she's ever been. She's having to navigate the whims and the moods, first of Henry VIII and then of all his children. And sometimes she ends up very much on the wrong side of them. You know, if she falls in love with the wrong man, she's thrown in the tower. If she's too ambitious for her son, she's thrown into prison again. And I think that what does come across in her letters quite often is a real sense of fear and sometimes real dread about, is she going to be able to achieve the things she wants to achieve? Is she going to be able to keep her family together? At the same time, she does become a person who's got a very clear sense of what she wants to do politically, and so all of the struggles she goes through also reveal her to be a very adaptable and very resilient person. Henry VIII is Margaret's uncle, and he treats her almost like a daughter. So he gives her the resources to dress as well as his own daughters do. So she walks around the court looking like an English princess. He imagines these quite grand diplomatic marriages for her. He promises her that he will never force her to marry a man she doesn't love. And for all of her life, Margaret talks about Henry's memory with tremendous affection and loyalty. But at the same time, they have three really dramatic fallings out. Twice when she falls in love without his permission, and finally right before he dies. And he ends up cutting her and her family out of the line of succession. So it's a complicated relationship that the two of them have. I'm Morgan Ring, I'm a historian, and I'm the author of So High a Blood, the story of Margaret Douglas, the Tudor that time forgot.